But it's time to get into the actual football. Now that we've had actual games, we're going to bring in our stock up, stock down segment and talk about teams or players. This week, they're all teams that are rising. Let's start with Miami. I feel like that was what?
No, I mean, like, let's start with Miami is amazing because I feel like we've waited so long to really engage in this conversation about their ability to like actually win. And I know it's one game and we do the overreaction thing. Miami looks like they might be able to actually win.
I know. Well, you're right. So like they're our number one team of like, hey, they had a good week. It's been a while since we can put Miami in that group. We said this last week, right? Like the loser of the Miami-Florida game was going to be in a complete meltdown mode.
Yep.
Accurate. But the winner, like it was Miami, the way that Cam Ward played, like sky is the limit, especially with the way the rest of the ACC looks. Like Miami is absolutely the favorite now. But like Cam Ward was such a huge pickup. We talked about like all the different like what ifs, right? Sliding doors of, what if he had gone to Florida State? What if he had stayed in the draft? Like this worked out brilliantly because we saw him at his best in his debut.
Yeah, and he looks super comfortable out there, which is amazing. He's a difference maker for that program. And I think that with his playmaking ability, both within structure and outside of structure, they're going to be fantastic. Restrepo was phenomenal too at wide receiver, and he had some big plays a year ago. But again, that connection is going to be big for them. And this idea now of Miami not just being like, a really talented on paper team and like seeing they can actually execute and they can make the explosive play and they just have to put it together for a season is really exciting because the last 2 years we could have looked at Miami and had similar expectations because of the talent, but there was nothing there to make us believe they can do it. Now we have a reason to believe.
Absolutely. The bandwagon is filling up. People are into it. And I'm glad you brought up Restrepo. He's someone that like he's been there, but he deserves his shine. And we saw what he was capable of in this game. And I hope he continues to be a focal point of the offense. Another team that is up, Penn State. They have an offense. They have an explosive and aggressive and interesting offense under Andy Kotelnicki. Like how blown away were you by what we saw from Drew Aller after what we saw from him last year?
I thought this was a really good offensive performance for Penn State. Drew Aller's a different player right now. And I'm not saying that because it's like, he made a couple. Like emotionally, he's a different player. He's engaged with the game in a different way that we didn't get to see a year ago. He looked like a deer in headlights a lot of times, and it was unfortunate because you're like, if he can ever get in a groove, he's going to be all right. I loved it. I think Kotelnicki has opened up a side of this offense that we haven't seen in a while, which is like the creative formations and shifts and motions that lead to the actual explosive plays. I think that Mike Yurcich tried to do some of that, but he couldn't execute on the most important part, which was the outcome of the play being explosive. My biggest question, though, and as I said it when we were watching the game, there was a big run for Penn State. I'm still not sure that this run game is punchy enough, but if they can throw the ball down the field the way that they did, I'm not sure that it matters all too much.
Yeah, I think some of your criticism is based on the way the offense, it was painful for the offense to move the ball sometimes. Yeah. But if it looks easy, and this is an offensive coordinator that did it with multiple quarterbacks, Kansas had injury issues, but they remained like the way you're talking about the shifts, the motion, they had all of that no matter who was under center or in the gun. Like it's going to be entertaining to continue to watch, and we'll see if it sticks. But like, I think this is the most encouraging you've got to feel as a Penn State fan in years from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, I think Penn State fans probably have that, and I hate to like use PTSD in this type of situation, but they probably have that like, well, I got to see it against Ohio State because I've been fooled before, and I think that's a really tough spot to be in because it makes it hard to enjoy the journey up to that game.
Yeah, and maybe it shifts a little bit with the 12-team playoff because those playing Ohio State, like that may not be the barrier to getting you to the postseason, right? So I mean, I feel really good. I think the people who put Penn State in their brackets like got to feel really good about what we saw in that debut. Last team for stock up, Notre Dame. We've talked about this a little bit. We saw them in the poll. This was a huge, huge win against Texas A&M in
Yeah.
incredibly hostile environment. I think by far the most challenging game on their schedule, though USC looks improved defensively. They've got a quarterback. They've got all of that at the end of the year. But like the defense was phenomenal, which we thought going in. And like Marcus Freeman had told me, like, no issues, no questions on the defense. Like that was like our conversation about that side of the ball. That was accurate. We saw that. And then I think you saw a toughness from a young offensive line, the new transfer quarterback, like to gut it out at the end.
I'm there with you. I thought the defense looked as good as any defense I had seen in an opening game from a fundamental and physicality standpoint. Like I flipped on the coach's tape earlier this week, and everybody's playing square. They're playing with good bend, and they get to the ball or they get to whoever's trying to block them with really bad intentions. And I was like, I don't know. I felt a way emotionally watching that, like love, honestly, because I don't think people play defensive football very well nowadays. So that was great. Their offense is still a bit of a question to me. The question that I have, Jeremiah Love's phenomenal, so I don't have a singular question about that. As Mike Robb likes to say, the offense feels too small. They still don't feel like a downfield threat yet. I think they need to get there. I love Riley Leonard. I love his toughness. I like the way he plays the game. I don't know if he should get himself beat up like that because he took some shots in this game and he's been hurt in the past. Those are the questions they have to ask in terms of like their success this year, because you get to the end, Riley Leonard's not there. It might be a little bit tough. You get to the end, your offense still isn't big. They can't stretch the field. Might be tough. But like if those are the questions you're trying to answer, I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, and that is like their main focus. You know, when I was talking to the coaches when I was in South Bend a couple weeks ago, they do want him to go through progressions and not immediately run. And they know that that's part of who he is. And you're absolutely right about gets you banged up, gets you injured, but also like that doesn't stretch the field. That doesn't create and open up the other things that they want offensively. So that is something to keep an eye on. I think we will see more out of Riley Leonard as a passer, you know, kind of staying in that pocket, trying to go through his progressions and figure out more the vertical passing game, or at least getting different people involved to stretch the field a bit. So we'll see. Their schedule obviously lightens up a bit here now that they're through week one. I think they have an absolutely clear path to the college football playoff, which is wild to say in week one. Florida State does not look all that formidable on their schedule the rest of the way. And it's basically just USC. And like this is a team, and maybe the schedule will be an issue, but you know, you can lose a game and still make it to the college football playoff in a 12-team era. So
I think they can lose a game 100% and still make it. If they lose two, we're having a different
conference. Yeah, agree, without the conference championship. And like that's where they are. But again, with this schedule, I'd be surprised. Like I think like they have the clearest, you know, I mean anyone, I guess Georgia like went out.
No, they've got a clear path. Like I mean, when you look at Georgia, the one thing you say is they still got to play in the SEC, right? Like
right. But Notre Dame, mulligans. You know, they'll be.
Yeah.
Yes.